Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. All about nutrition from your favorite dietitian. Everything you need to digest in your mind. Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. Making you healthier one bite at a time. With Tony. Woo.
Hello and welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast. I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. I'm very excited because with me today is Kelly Lynn. She is a transformational coach and professional speaker. I am so excited to have her today. Kelly, please introduce yourself by sharing what you do, who you are, and why you do what you do.
Hi, Tony. Thank you so much for having me, first off. And I think what you're creating is so powerful for everyone because I feel like if we don't feel good, I mean, that's the number one. Health is so important. If we don't feel good, then like we are not an asset to anybody. So a little bit about me, I'll just do a short intro. So like you said, I'm a transformational coach, a speaker. I created a movement called the After 5 Club that supports 9-to-5ers, really, manage your mindset, maximize their money, and manage their time. So, but I work with a lot of different people and coach and speak, and from celebrities to executives to stay-at-home moms. I mean, my client base is pretty much all over. And what I like to tell people is I'm a trusted trusted source of transformation. So just helping people really unblock where they're stuck and, unblock from personal or business so they can really, gain and step into their full potential. So that's a little bit about me.
That's really powerful. What made you get into that?
Funny. So right out of college, I always wanted to work on Wall Street. So I'll kind of tell you a little bit about my background. So I came from corporate America. I worked for probably, 15 plus years. And I worked for some of the biggest and well-known fashion brands and retail brands in the industry. If I named a few, you would definitely know who they were. And on the side, I had my first business ever was selling skincare, doing home parties. And one of my clients at the time said, you would be great as a coach. And this was a couple of years ago when coaching wasn't really that big of a thing. And I'm like, what's a sports coach? What do you mean coach? And she's like, no, a coach where you help people step into their power and see their potential. She's like, you're already doing it with us. Cause I had a team of women that was selling skincare and makeup. And so I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. So I did my due diligence, actually went to a coaching school, got certified, and I fell in love. And I started my coaching business literally on the side of my corporate job. And I coached 50 people for free. And that's how I started my coaching business. And I loved it. And I was always a product of coaching. I always had a coach, even starting, in my 20s. And I loved it. And I did all, huge into personal development. I did the fire walk. I did, all these crazy things. So, and I'm always reading. So that's how I really came into the industry and then started my business.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So I definitely want to pause a little bit because I have a lot of dietetic interns or registered dietitians to be, or honestly, even registered dietitians who listen to my podcast, but maybe work for another company and haven't really stepped into the entrepreneurial route or whatever. And I think, and even just people just trying to lose weight and gain healthier and gain fitness, I think they want immediate results right away. But I think you said something really important there, which was you've coached 50 people for free without expectation, right? You weren't expecting, it wasn't for money. You obviously needed the experience. You loved it. And now as a result, you are able to make a bigger impact and make money and live life on your terms and all that. So that's just I think a lesson for everyone, to not skip over that point. You got to put in the work first, the dirty work, before you can really be able to coach others in a way that you really can set yourself apart of I am the expert.
Absolutely. 100%. And I think people nowadays, especially with social media, like we want instant gratification now. Like we live in an Amazon Prime world, Venmo world. Like we want things now. And, I just say to people, one of my coaches said, to me, like, play the game, like act like it's a game, have fun. And the reason why I took on that challenge of the 50 people is because in coaching school, they said you never become a master unless you do 10,000 hours of that thing.
Yeah.
And so I played a game with it. I'm like, okay, game on. I was still in coaching school. I was like, I'm just going to coach people. I'm not even going to charge yet. I'm going to, and that is what really built my confidence and just the tools and the practice. And let me tell you, it wasn't all rose colored glasses type scenarios either. Like I learned a lot. And then at one point, after the 50 people, I was like, okay, I'm ready to charge. Like it just was like this thing. So I would just say, like, I think you're absolutely right. It's like slowing down and playing the game, and it's not the sexy thing that we want to hear. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like when we talk about commitment, like people want things quickly and fast and sexy and beautiful. And it's like, the person that goes to work at the DMV, right? They go to work every day at the DMV because they're committed to their job, right? Mm-hmm. Or getting a paycheck. Like, I think that's the mentality that we may want to like explore a little bit,
Mm-hmm. For sure. So you also mentioned that you were coached a lot. And I know someone who's coached you, and nobody's listening does know this, but I think if anybody listens or reads personal development books, then they'll be really impressed to know that you were coached by the Gabby Bernstein. So Can you please tell us a little bit more about your experience working with Gabby? Maybe even talk a little bit more about like what she does for those who maybe aren't familiar with Gabby Bernstein.
Yeah. So Gabby is, God, how do you classify her? I guess she's like a spiritual, a spiritual coach, or, she's really a best-selling author now and well acclaimed speaker. She has, I think, like 6 or 7 books. She's a New York Times bestseller. And I met Gabby really when she first started out, when she was doing these, talks throughout New York City. And she really is an inspiration to me to this day still. And I've just watched her grow. I've been on the journey with her. And I was literally like one of the first 6 girls, like sitting in her living room when she would do these coaching circles. And I supported her and still do to this day. And she's been so instrumental in my growth and transformation. And, I can just remember like just getting up my first website ever. And I was such a perfectionist and had these tendencies. And she's like, just get it up. I was like, okay. And like, she really helped me and guided me and pushed me to just get the website up, because you know how websites are. Like, we never think they're done or perfect.
It's like a house. Literally, a house. Once you finish one room, you got to do another room.
Yeah. And like 10 days later, you're like, oh, I could really like update my homepage again. Like, it's never done. It's always a work in progress. So I had put up my first ever website, and it was up. Was it perfect? No. So I remember that so vividly. But she has been such really a trusted source of transformation in my life, and I just really admire just her growth. I've seen her grow. I've seen her. She's just such a hard worker. I've seen her. And she's such a testament too of like, coaches need other coaches, right? And you're never done the work. Like, she wasn't perfect by any means, and today she's still not. And she'll be the first one to say that. And she was committed to doing her own work and then coaching us along the way. So I think that's, probably the biggest lesson that I've learned for her. And it's like progress over perfection,
Yeah. My coach says imperfect action beats standing still.
Absolutely. And so I have a podcast called Perfectly Imperfect, and that it's just like talking about those issues of like, all your imperfections are perfect, right? And that's what makes up you. That's what make up, your life and how you're living.
Yeah, and helps you stand out too. Like, I know what we're going to talk about today is basically like, how do people choose the right coach? And I think a lot of it is the more you are yourself, the more you attract the right clientele, kind of on the flip side of things. But yeah, I think being able to embrace your imperfections is what makes you unique.
Absolutely. And you don't have to have it all together, and you can be raw, you can be not put together. You know, coming from the fashion industry, I always felt like I had to be all put together and look perfect and have this perfect image. And then it's like, no, you really don't have to. Right. And that's what society deems that, quote unquote, we should do. And, just even I had a first podcast with another co-host, and we had some really heavy hitter interviews that we did. And all we did was just reach out to them. Mm-hmm. We interviewed Wayne Dyer's daughter. He's another spiritual guru. He has passed. But we had so many influential people on our podcast. And the reason why is because we just got real, raw and dirty, and literally just reached out to people and asked. Mm-hmm. We didn't have like a PR team. We didn't have any of that stuff. So that's just kind of if people are looking to be like, oh, how did you get this opportunity? It's like, just go for it, Yeah.
Yeah. What's interesting? This is like a really weird analogy, but I'm just going to say it because it happened yesterday or 2 days. So Sunday, I hosted my sister's bridal shower, and you know how you do like the games at the bridal shower, and they're like the hardest, most ridiculous, sometimes easy games. They're just like where I noticed like, most of the people didn't even try because they thought it was too hard. Like it was like loves categories or something like that, or like bridal emojis. Like it was fun, but half of the people played, half the people didn't. And so of those half that actually played, there were some winners. But the people who didn't even try obviously weren't going to win. So I think what you're saying is basically like, because you even asked, you didn't like, just because you asked, you actually got yeses. But if you never asked, you're never going to get a yes.
Absolutely. And actually, so one of the coaches I coached with, he says, are you being a spectator or are you like on the court playing the game? Mm-hmm. And I think that's such a great analogy. It's like some people don't even try. Like they don't even, like you said, it's like, are you playing the game? Like, and that's the same kind of analogy of the DMV. Like, are you going to work? Are you getting up every day and doing maybe one thing towards your goal or your dream or, whatever it is, living a healthier lifestyle or building the business? Like, it doesn't have to be, this grandiose dream, and it can be, right? But it's the little steps forward that we take every single day that's going to make the impact.
Totally. Yeah. Oh my God, I love this already. We didn't even start yet. Okay, so what I really wanted to talk about today was because I find like this comes up a lot, and I've never done like a full episode about it, but I had this really bad advice when I first started out, and I would just like, I was a co-host to a podcast, and, they would always ask my opinion being the nutrition expert. And I would always be like, just get a coach. You need a coach, get a coach, without really ever giving guidelines of like, there are some really terrible coaches out there and not every coach is for you. And I would and then, people would come to me and like, they'd want to work with me, but they'd be scared because they had a really, really, really bad experience working with other coaches that maybe told them to do quite ridiculous things, to be honest. And just like, obviously it wasn't effective. It didn't work for them. And now they feel disheartened. They're not really ready to try again because they have that past experience. So I guess, we can't really prevent people from making, making quote unquote the wrong mistake and choosing the wrong coach, but hopefully they can learn from it, or hopefully we can prevent them from, going down that path in some way. But I guess the question I wanted to ask you is, since you've been coached by so many people, you coach a lot of people, what is it that, like, what can our listeners look for to know that they are choosing the right coach so that they don't make those mistakes that maybe they've made in their past, or maybe they've seen their friends make, or they're afraid to make? What could they be looking for so that they know they're in the hands of someone who's really going to help and support their goals?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think what you said previously, I've had so many coaches, and, I don't know if I've ever had a bad coach. Every coach that I've had, I've learned something from, whether I liked their methodology or not. It's kind of like dating, right? Like we quote unquote, oh, that was a bad relationship. But then looking back, you're like, oh, but I learned this. And like, now I know what to look for. So I don't think anything is bad. I think people are doing the best they can with what they know, right? Because if I were to look back at when I first started coaching, like the 50 people that I first, oh my gosh, I was like, huh? Like I didn't know what I was doing, but I still like the whole intention behind it is like I was still serving people, right? So I think as we make mistakes, we all do in like any industry or as we're learning and growing. But yeah, the coaching industry is huge. I think it's about like a $2 billion industry today.
It's really big.
Yeah. And I think if someone's looking for a coach, I think they have to know why they're looking for a coach, because there's so many coaches out there. There's so many reasons why you would hire a coach. There's so many, like for business, for life, for health and wellness, for money, finances. So I think it's like, okay, asking, if someone's looking for it, like, what do you want, right? Like, is it to play a bigger role in your life? Is it to move forward in a certain area? Like, what do you want to accomplish? So I think it starts with the person, right? Of what, and getting really intentional and asking like, okay, where do I want help, or where do I want to make a leap or up level or create or make an impact in my life? Because there's so many facets to life. So I would say, I have like 3 or 4 things that I think, and this is my opinion, take it or leave it. You could take one tip and leave the rest. But this is what I have found to, for me and for a lot of my clients that I serve, that is pretty impactful. So like, number one, it's like, does the coach have a coach? Like working with a coach that has a coach and investing in their own growth, right? So I know like when I was working out, since we just talked about Gabby, like when she was coaching us, she herself had a coach, right? So it's like they're working, making sure that coach is working on themselves, right? Because as a coach, I want to serve the clients to the best of my ability, and I'm not going to ask them to do anything that I haven't really been through, or right. So it's is that person, does that coach have a coach, or is investing in themselves, right? So I think that's huge, and to me, it's like the number one thing, and it's just, for me, it's like a non-negotiable when I work with someone. Number 2 is like, do they have something that you want? And this doesn't have to be tangible. It could be like, maybe they just are happy all the time, or they just have this peace or this joy, or maybe it is, maybe they have the income, maybe they have the influence or the impact or the visibility, so it's like, whatever and it doesn't have to match so much. Like, for example, like my coach, she's very successful. And at one point in my life, I had to learn to slow down. Like I was moving 101 miles an hour and it wasn't serving me. I was missing opportunities. I was moving too fast. I wasn't seeing the people that were coming towards me. I wasn't taking opportunity. And when I slowed down, and slowing down meaning like being intentional, and like it was really hard, because I was like, I would have anxiety, and she put me on kind of like, let's do a game, like let's have you do nothing for a whole Sunday, like no email, no, nothing work related. And I couldn't do that at one point in my life. I could not do it. So and that was such a transformational lesson for me. And I hired her because, yes, she was successful and made money and had impact and influence and all of that stuff I wanted. However, like I didn't think the biggest lesson I was going to learn from that was the slowing down. And when I slowed down, I was attracting more clients and more visibility. Like it all just kind of flowed, right?
Yeah.
So do they have something that they want? And then I would say the third thing is, do you really feel listened to and heard? Like, the quality of their presence is huge. Again, we're living in such a fast society that people people aren't really listened to. And three things that people want is they want to feel heard, seen, and listened to, right? And if you can do that as a coach, and this goes for any, like, it could be finances, it could be health and wellness, it could be anything, right? Just you being present and listening to the other person is like huge. I remember I had one client, we had one session together, one of our one sessions, and all she did was literally talk for 45 minutes. I asked her maybe 3 questions in the whole session. And she's like, oh my God, it was like the best session, she said, that we had. Like, because she came, and that's the thing with coaching, and like, is like, we all have the answers within, right? We are our own best gurus. So sometimes we don't have the space and the time and the freedom to really just like talk it out or listen to ourselves talk. So I would say that is like, do you feel listened and heard? With a coach? And then number 4 is like, it's just like chemistry. It's kind of like dating. Like, do you have chemistry? Do you connect with them? Do they get you? You know, I had a client where she said she had a list of 4 coaches and I was one of them. And she's like, honestly, I picked you because I connected with you. You're the only one. So sometimes it just comes down to connection and chemistry, right? So I would say those are like my top 4.
Those are great. Those are really great. So, all right. So let's just recap again. So you obviously need to know why you're starting. You need to know why that's important and what are you actually looking for. Does the coach have a coach, or are they investing in themselves in some way? Do they have something that you want? It could be happiness. It could be success. Do you feel listened to and heard? And is there chemistry? And I think that last one, chemistry, is actually really important, because really when you think about it, you know, to be honest, I think it's kind of like I like the dating example a lot, because there are like a ton of great guys out there or great girls out there, but sometimes they're just not that chemistry. So and then that's what makes a difference between a friendship and a love relationship, right? So like, I think a lot of good coaches are gonna, I would hope, all those good coaches, and I connect with so many coaches like you, and then, you know, there are other dietitians and stuff like that. Like, they're gonna have those things. They're gonna have coaches. They're probably gonna have something that you want, and they're gonna help. And if they're a good coach, they're gonna listen to you, and you're gonna feel heard. But I think that last one is probably the most important one, because I think that's the one that really, going back to like what makes you you, what makes you unique. I think that connection is what really is going to make a big difference between learning and like truly just like getting the most out of that relationship as a coach to client sort of a thing.
Yes. And I think it's so important. And I will say this, you know, the coach, it's not like, yes, there should be chemistry and it should feel there should be a connection. However, like at certain points, there's times where like I very much dislike my coach because she pushes me and she sees me, and she literally, it's like she holds up a mirror to the stuff that like I either don't want to see or I'm not aware of. And sometimes it hurts, like, and sometimes it's really uncomfortable. And I always know is, you know, when the question she asks, it's like, so can I ask you something, Kelly? And I know she's coming in with a whammy, you know, and I'm like, oh, I got to get prepared, because, and they really see you because, you know, they're an outside, you know, source looking in, or they really know you. Right. So I think the chemistry is, super important. And sometimes that's like, could be the only thing that you decide on.
Totally.
Frankly.
Yeah, totally. And that was a good point. Yeah. It's not going to be super easy. If anything, a good coach is going to call you out on your crap, really. And it's going to like really give you what you need. They don't just tell you what you want to hear. They give you what you need.
Yeah. And it's always with the intention of like serving, right? Like, and I think it's like, okay, like, am I serving this person, you know, to their full potential? Because it's really, a coach sees things that you may not even see for yourself, right? That you're so capable of doing, but you might be self-sabotaging yourself or holding yourself back or any of that stuff. and the coach can see it with clear eyes. Right?
Totally. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that is so common. And especially, like, I'm not sure how long your clients kind of stay with you. If you have like a minimum set, I have a minimum commitment of 6 months, because I feel that, like, other than that, I mean, anybody can follow anything for a few months, but it's like 6 months or more, that's when we start to see that self-sabotage. And if we don't address it when you're working with a professional, it can be really, really detrimental. It could really bring you completely backwards. So I'm curious, in your work, like, how often do you see someone go through that self-sabotage? What does it look like, and why do you think they're doing it?
Yeah. And 100%, I think it's like personal training, right? Like, you can sign up for personal training for a month, but will you see results? Yeah. But like, if you work with them for 6 months or a year, like, you're really going to see results, right? So I mean, that topic of like self-sabotage, imposter syndrome, I mean, I see it a lot. I see it even in myself. Like, you know, it's like, it's because there's a thing, and there's a book called The Big Leap by, Gary Hendricks, I think.
It's on my list. I haven't listened to it.
It's so good. So they talk about this like upper limit problem. It's not a problem, but it's this upper limit that we all have. And when we go beyond this upper limit, like when we start to achieve and go past what we think we're capable of, things can start happening, like getting physically sick or getting a cold or you know, literally self-sabotage. So I think we can self-sabotage ourselves literally every day if we wanted to, you know. And, you know, my coach says, like, how good can you stand it? Right? Like, how good can you stand it? And there's a limit for how good we can stand it for everyone. Right. So I think it depends on, there's so much that goes into this, right? The self-talk, the mindset, you know, things, past experiences. Like, we don't want to create, like, we can create anything that we want. However, it's like a lot of us create from our past. So we keep creating the same past event in our future. So it's called like a recycled future, right? It's just a recycled past in your future. So I think it happens a lot. It can happen in any area of life. It can happen in money and love. And so it's kind of like, you know, taking a shower every day or brushing your teeth. Like, there has to be the mindset work and maybe the writing, like whatever it is, there's certain tools and techniques you can do to, you know, really, you know, not go back, you know, or not limit yourself. And I think a coach is just so helpful because we can only do so much on our own.
Right. Which is so true, which is very, very true. And, you know, you and I know that because we are products of coaching, of being coached and coaching. But I think a lot of people are resistant towards it, and because they think that they can do it alone. And then when like push comes to shove, and then they find out how much the investment is, you know, the fear comes out. So what would you say to someone who like thinks that way? They think like, you know what, it's a big investment and I can do it on my own, so I'm not going to bother, even though like I know I could use the help and would be beneficial, but at the same time, like I'd rather save the money in my pockets and do this by myself because I feel like maybe I can do that.
Yeah, so I think it's a couple things. I think it first starts out like coaching came from the sports world and the entertainment world, right? So that's where coaching stems from basketball coaches to then actors, you know, coaches. And so I would say this, like, it's just not that important to people. You know, like, so and as I raise my fees, right, in coaching, I'm serving a different type of person, right? And I think it just comes down to that initial question, like, how bad do you want to make change, or do you want to play bigger, or do you like it all comes, and there's no good or bad, like there's no right or wrong decision. Like, it's okay not to have a coach, right? Like, not, and that's why I say not everyone needs or wants a coach, like, and that doesn't make them bad at all, right? I think it's a personal decision. I think it all comes from intention, right? And what the want has to be bigger, right, than kind of the excuses and listen, at some points, like, trust me, I couldn't afford some of my coaches, you know. For one coach, I took out a loan and I took money out of my 401k at one point. Like, I was so committed. So I think it comes down to like, how bad do you really want it? Like, how bad do you want to see change in your life for whatever that thing you want is? It could be relationships. And I feel like there's so many coaches out there that if there's one coach that you really, really want to work with and maybe you really, really don't have the money, like there's so many other amazing coaches that could serve you maybe at a different price point, right? So I think there's so many ways to look at it. And sometimes it's like you're just in the in-between stage, right? Like I know I've been in the in-between, like sessions of my life per se. And sometimes I had to maybe just invest in a course or, so it just, I think it's so personal. It's so dependent on every single person's situation. However, I will say the times that I have pushed myself and invested like in very high fee coaching, is when I have literally skyrocketed, right? And the change and the transformation has been so huge for me. So that's what I will say.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I feel like, yes, there's a time and place for everything and it might not be for everyone. But there is something to be said. I think that if you're going to, and not necessarily, once again, it is very person specific, but I think if you are going to pay a lower fee, then your expectations of what you're going to get out of it have to go down. And unfortunately, sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes people charge a high amount and their stuff is fluff, and that's a really, really hard learning experience. But I think that if you have all of those things that you just said, Kelly, like the why, do they have a coach? Do they have something you want? Do you feel heard and listened to? Is there that chemistry? You have all of those things, and the value is maybe higher than you expected. I think you're going to save a lot of time and energy, because if you go for someone that's, maybe doesn't have those things and the price is lower, really, you're just going to end up spending more money in the long run and you're wasting time. And I think time is the most valuable thing that we have on this planet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And I think it's, again, it's like, why do you want a coach, right? It has to be a huge, it has to be there, because, like I've hired, health coaches or, like relationship coaches, like, and there, in some seasons of life, I may not be focused on that, right, at that point. Yeah, so I think it just depends,
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. Yeah, you don't have to have a coach if you don't want it right now. We're just thinking that if you're thinking about hiring one, these are definitely things you want to make sure that the person has.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, we have a little bit more time. You mentioned this like in the middle, and I just wrote it down because I just think that it's important. You mentioned, and you kind of just briefed over it, but I feel like this is like what you do, so I wanted to highlight it a bit. You mentioned something about like that state of flow, like when you're working with the right coach, when you kind of just like things tend to be working, you're in that state of flow. Can you maybe elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah. So I would say flow. So when like grace is present, and I think it's hard for people to understand because, like I said, we're just moving at 1,000 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. We're always connected to our phones. We're always, we're getting pulled in, 100 different directions. And I would say, God, flow. It's like hard to explain because it just is, right? So it's like, so I'll share a story. So that, my coach was like, I want you to take that Sunday off. Right. And I was in a state where I'm like, I can't do that. Like I have, a newsletter to do. I had like all these to do things, on my calendar. And she's like, well, you've been working, I was working like at that point, 7 days a week. Yeah. And not really, I was working out, like that was self-care, but it was more routine. Like I really didn't allow myself to relax. And so I took that Sunday off, but I had such high anxiety. I was like, well, what do I do now? Like, I'm not the type of person that like sits and watch TV or, I just don't. So I literally forced myself to read a book. And then I was like, I had high anxiety. And then I was like, okay, what else? I was just antsy the whole day. And so, but what I realized is after, a couple hours, I was like, okay, this is fine. I just really slowed down and relaxed. And the next day, I got an email, and it was from a potential client, a woman that I spoke to, gosh, maybe it was like 6 months prior. I didn't even remember her. And she basically was like, how are you? She's like, I'm ready to work with a coach. I can pay you in full. When can we start? And I was like, what? Like, so that's just like a testament of slowing down and like being in flow. And sometimes, you know, I don't know if that would have been a missed opportunity if I didn't slow down. I don't know what would have occurred. However, I do know this. It's like, I know when I'm in flow, and it's kind of like, I would define flow and grace as like, you could do something for hours and lose track of time.
Yeah.
Right. So that's like flow. Or maybe you're just like feeling amazing and just like one thing after another just like comes to you and you're ready for it. And you're not so busy. You just miss the like divine downloads or the intuitive nudges.
Yeah.
So I think it's like that whole, and people relate slowing down to being lazy or not doing things. It's not what it means, right? It's being like slowing down to the speed of life. And just taking in like, is there an opportunity within this, right? And it's kind of like when they say taking a digital detox, and it doesn't have to be days, it doesn't have to be like, it literally could be taking like 10 minutes out of the day, right? Or doing something. But I think flow and grace, I think there has to be a little bit more in our lives today, especially because we're moving so fast. You know, I was waiting for something the other day and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's taking so long. And I'm like, Kelly, like slow down. Like, and I was like, cause you're so used to like, you know, Amazon and Venmo and, you know, Instagram and Facebook, you know, like it's all this. And I was like, wow, I'm really impatient in this moment, you know, and being okay, like not judging ourselves for it.
Right.
But I think there's a lot, people miss a lot of things when they're not in flow or they're not slowed down, and we can't always be in that state, right? But just taking a moment for yourself, like even if it's during the day or during the week, you know, to be conscious, at least to be conscious and aware of what you're doing. I think that's the first step.
Totally. Yeah. I think being mindful is like the first thing for everything. Because if you're not aware of it, you can't change it.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like eating, right? Like emotional eating. It's like, okay, I'm like really emotionally eating right now. Like, you know, like I'm eating mac and cheese and like all this gluten, like, you know, and that's okay. Like it's being mindful when you're in the act and you're like, okay, I'm being mindful of it, you know, and such having awareness is huge.
Yeah, because then there's only for so long you're going to be aware of it and then not do something about it if you actually want it to change.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, Kelly, is there anything else? This has been so wonderful. Is there anything else that you want to add or talk about that we didn't get a chance to today?
Yeah, I would just say like the last thing, I would just say if there is something like in your head and on your heart, like it was placed there for a reason. That idea or that dream or that passion is there for a reason. And, you know, I know throughout my journey, I can say that, you know, I guess struggle and survival have been just so prevalent in my life, like throughout the years. And it's like, but that's a choice, right? So we can choose to not struggle anymore. We can choose to not, you know, really suffer, because it's really suffering, right? So I would just say, if there's something that's not happening, quote unquote, fast enough, that's okay, right? Like every single thing is in divine timing, and you're going through whatever you're going through right now for a reason. And I would say, if there's something in your head and your heart and it's been there for a while, or maybe it just popped in yesterday, like go for it. You know, like life is so short. We are not guaranteed any amount of time here. And it's like, it's okay. It's going to happen, you know? And some of my biggest ahas, biggest opportunities, biggest transformations have come from the mess, right? The messiness. Some of my biggest, you know, tests become my testimonials. So it's just being at ease and at peace with where you are right now, even though it's not where you want to be. And that's okay, because this is not the final destination, right? So just knowing that there's no mistake that there's something in your head and your heart that you want to do or be or achieve, and just keep going. Just keep going.
Such powerful stuff. Kelly, you definitely just spoke to my heart. I'm really, really glad and thank you for making time for us today. I really, really appreciate you being here and sharing so much of your wisdom where can people find you if they want to connect with you and learn more from you and about you?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me on too. So they can just go on my website, kellylynnadams.com. My podcast is on there, links to all social media, and they can, sign up for my newsletter. I really communicate whatever I'm doing through that, that portal, and that's it.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Kelly. Hopefully we'll talk soon. I really appreciate you coming on, and have a great day.